Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast, the English breakfast edition. I am your host, Chris, as I almost always am. And as I almost always have, I got Ross back with me. Good evening and happy weekend to you, Ross.
Good evening.
It's a better weekend for you this weekend. We'll come on to that in a minute, but happier this weekend after last week's.
You can hear it in my voice, much chirpier.
Much happier, yes, same, indeed. Right, we're here as always, Ross, to talk about the weekend's action in England, and from all the leagues downwards and upwards, as it were. Recording a little bit earlier this week. It seems weird recording when it's light outside, just about. Anywho, let's jump straight in. I'm going to throw the toys completely up in the air this week, Ross, because I'm going to start from back to front this week. We're going to start with the Sunday action and work our way backwards. It's crazy times, huh?
Anarchist.
I know. Let's start with Watford Manchester United, because there's lots to talk about in this one. Ended in a 3-1 victory for Watford, who've had two really good wins in a week now after their heroics last week at the London Stadium. And a 3-1 victory over Manchester United. The first question I've got for you, it's a bit of a firecracker of a question, but Manchester United, 3 defeats in a week. Crisis or not crisis?
Well, by their standards, it's a crisis, isn't it? Although, by their standards of the past few seasons, I don't know, it's kind of status quo over the last few years, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of Man United. I think this is by far and away Mourinho's toughest job, and I don't think he's quite got his starting 11 nailed down yet. I think Rooney was dropping deeper and deeper as the season's gone on, and as that game went on especially. And the first thing he said when he came in was that Rooney was a striker, so he's clearly maybe underestimated how big this job is. It's not gone for him this week especially. You have to wonder how much damage a 2-1 defeat to Man City does, especially when Bravo's having the game he did last week and they didn't have Aguero. It's well, you can't say any worse than it was an awful week for Man United. It's quite an embarrassing week in some ways for Man United, but is it any worse than they've had over the past few seasons? I don't know. It might feel worse because of the level of talent and the money they've spent and the new manager they got in, but it's bizarre week. I can't honestly say I didn't see the Watford win coming because I did back them today. Didn't see 3-1. I thought it might be an odd goal, but there you go. But yeah, it's I don't want to say typical Man United, but it's still you would have seen them do this last season, so I'm not overly astounded that it's happened. I think it's more of a shock that it's happened now that Pogba, Ibrahimovic, and Mourinho are in.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. It's almost the level of performances as well that they've put in, because they've put in sort of three pretty poor performances. And speaking of which, I want to ask you a little bit about some individuals, because there has been quite a lot of attention on social media about a lot of players' performances today, and rightly so, I would have to say. Paul Pogba, Marouane Fellaini, and Wayne Rooney specifically have been kind of angled for abuse today. What do you sort of think is going wrong in that sort of situation? Because you mentioned sort of Ibra's been quiet the last few games as well. So particularly in Pogba and Rooney's case, do you think that's scapegoats because of the price in Pogba and the profile in Rooney?
Yeah, I think that's exactly why they both have to play, but at the same time you have to fit them both in, and you don't drop Ibrahimovic for Rooney, so where do you put Rooney? If you're going to put Rooney in the number 10 role, where do you put Pogba? Because he doesn't seem to be getting the best out of him in the holding role. I know you've seen him more than I have, and you don't think that's his best position. It wasn't his best position for France over the Euros. John doesn't think that's his best position for Juve. So it's tricky, but you can't drop Pogba for the 90 million you spent on him. And as much as fans say, be brave and drop Rooney, as soon as someone drops Rooney, it's, oh my God, where's Wayne Rooney? So you can't win. They have to play, in my opinion, but it's a case of getting the balance right, and then you have to sacrifice someone else, and then you have to move Rooney out wide, or you have to put Pogba here and there, or whatever. So it's very complicated, and like I say, I think this is Mourinho's biggest job, because he just seems to have so many great pieces, but they're just not fitting together right now, unless you take one away.
Yeah, one out, a couple in, or vice versa. We should get some love to Watford, of course, who, as we said, they had that fantastic victory last weekend over West Ham away from home. It's another good victory for them today. Some very good performances all across the pitch. Do you think this is a sign that Walter Vatsari is starting to get his message across? It sounds like an obvious thing to ask, but they have changed a lot of players over the summer. They've changed a formation. The backroom staff have all changed. There's a lot of upheaval, but they seem to be clicking, and the players that they're picking in the right positions. It does seem to be something that's slowly starting to come together down at Vicarage Road, isn't it?
Yeah, I know everyone says that Everton are the dark horses for European places, and I completely agree with that. But the more I see Watford, the more I start to think maybe they can do it too. Because the European places this year, I think, are going to be much wider than they were last season. Because last season it was all about which sides could break into the top four and challenging for the Champions League. This season there's going to be a lot more of a scrap for the middle range, because I don't think Southampton will be there this year because they're bouncing the cup and the competition. West Ham haven't made a very good start. They are not acclimatising well to their new surroundings and some of the changes they've been making, the players they've been losing on injury, etc., etc. So the Europa League places, I think, are going to be very hotly contested, and there's room for a couple of new up-and-comers. If Stoke aren't going to be there, as we've seen from the start of the season, they might not be, then I think Watford have got a fantastic chance of doing it. And I was impressed with them first game of the season against Southampton. I thought they looked quite well organised and a good defensive unit. All they needed was a few more goals, and as the games have gone on, they've got forward a bit better. They've managed to create more chances, and they've got their goals. So I don't see any reason to discount Watford. I don't think there's any reason to take them lightly. Personally, they're my new dark horses.
Can see where you're coming from. Yeah, definitely. I think it's the style. Matt Sarri is one of those coaches. Obviously, being an Inter fan, I've sort of seen a fair bit of him when he was at Inter, and it didn't work. But I also saw quite a lot of him when he was at Napoli, and it really did work. He's one of those coaches that, if it works brilliantly. If it doesn't, it's an absolute mess. There's no in between with him. So, and he's a very strict disciplinarian. So I think if he keeps those players on side, then, like you say, Watford, if you look at their squad on paper, it is, like you say, a top 8, top 10 side. On paper, there's a lot of good players. All it took
was Zagallo being a bit more confident to have got 3 or 4 goals himself the past couple of games, and then you're looking at a 4-1 over Man United and a 5-2 or a 6-2 over West Ham. It's not sleep on the fact that they've been very, very good and should have had more. In fact, the first half they could have had 2 or 3 more against Man United. So I really don't see a reason to discount them. I think they've looked very, very tidy early on.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. Right, well, we'll skip on to the other Sunday games then, and we'll come back actually to Palace because I've got a lot to talk about there. Let's give you a little bit of Southampton love first of all. Obviously, you saw more of this game than I did. Charlie Austin's had a good week. He bagged the winner in a game against Swansea, which I'm reliably informed by your good self that despite the fact you won 1-0, and I'm sure you're absolutely delighted with that, it could and probably should have been quite a lot more. So my question to you is, it's been a good week. Is this now, in your eyes, the turning point results wise, or is it just that you played 2 sides that were probably beatable?
Well, we did, but I think if you watch the games, you watch the highlights of Sparta Prague, and then you watch the Swansea game, it wasn't just we beat them 3-0 and 1-0. We absolutely controlled the game from minute 1 to minute 90. Neither side really gave us that much of a problem. Swansea only really came into the game in the last 10-15 minutes when Jefferson Montero came on. And why he's not starting, considering how good a player he is, I don't know. But Swansea were nowhere. We were completely dominant in that game, completely had all the ball in the first half, all of the best chances, controlled it all through both halves, never really feared them. It was only a Gylfi Sigurdsson chance in the second half that really worried me. Other than that, it was us. It was us from minute 1. So you could say they were beatable, and I definitely looked at these 2 fixtures and said we really do have to win these. But it's the manner in which we won them, because 1-0 flatters Swansea hugely. If you go and watch the highlights on Match of the Day 2 tonight, you will see us miss 3-4 glorious chances. We've had Redmond miss one from all of 5 yards out, if that. We've had Charlie Austin hit one against the bar off the back of Fabianski's head, which then bounces clear. We've had Shane Long score a goal that was chalked off for offside, even though Nathan Redmond is clearly onside. It was a landslide, or at least it should have been. So at the same time, as much as I can be annoyed that the goal difference hasn't swung, the main thing was proving to everyone that this could work in the Europa League and this could work in the Premier League. There has been a lot of concern over the diamond. I have been concerned over the diamond. I said a few weeks ago it was like watching someone try and teach a cat how to swim. Absolutely was, but it has now settled in. They are now swimming. It does look very promising. We made 7 changes from Thursday, and we were still completely dominant in that game. So I'm very impressed and very happy. The thing for me is that, as we were just discussing before we came on air, just dawned on me that our next fixtures, we've got Crystal Palace in the League Cup on Wednesday, then we're away to West Ham on the Sunday, and then we've got an away trip to Israel in the Europa League, and then we're away to Leicester City. So the next 4 games are going to be huge. It was massive. We picked up points today, big for the fans, big for the team, but the next 4 games, it's very shaky. I need to keep faith in Puel. We all need to keep faith in Puel, and just hope that we've got the squad depth to take us through, which on the back of this week, you'd have to say we do. Yeah,
well said, and again, a good week, and well done to your boys for that. It always sets you up for a good week, I find. Let's have a look into. Or should we save? Let's save Stoke till last. Let's quickly cover Spurs, because they picked up a victory over Sunderland in the final game of the weekend in the Premier League with a 1-0 victory. A game that saw Sunderland have 6 bookings and a red card. Also had a very interesting incident pre-game. I don't know if you saw this or heard about this, but they caught on TV Jason Denayer, the unknown Manchester City defender, getting the nod to come into the team late at the expense of Patrick Van Aanholt. And you could sort of, the pictures showed Van Aanholt visibly and audibly going, "What, me?" like when he was being told. And it was really last minute. Very, very strange. I think normally they have to have the team sheets in, so it's a very strange decision by David Moyes to change that, but change it he did. And that was the sort of pre-game switch. Sunderland then came out in what I can only describe as a Ribena kit, which it's quite hideous, if I'm honest. And then they went on to lose the game by the odd goal from Harry Kane, which sort of from a yard out, essentially. It's a good win for Spurs, but I want to just look at Sunderland. They strike me as a side that are in a real pickle this season. Are you confident that when all the signings and all the upheaval they've changed around settles, they'll be okay? Or do you think they are really in for a very long season of turmoil?
I think they're in for a long season of turmoil, but I still think that the signings they've made are actually quite good. You know, Kone and Djilabodji, I think are 2 very good centre-backs when you put them together. I haven't seen much of Ndong, but I hear very good things. Januzaj has got a point to prove with a manager that knows him well. Denayer I quite like. Stephen Pienaar is getting up in years, but you know he's still a very savvy winger, someone that's very well known by David Moyes. So I do fear for them. I think they will be near the bottom, and it wouldn't shock me to see them go down. But I still think they've got enough about them after the window's now been closed and seeing the signings they've got. When it settles down, I wouldn't have them in my bottom 3, but it still wouldn't stagger me to see them in it.
No, just that start, isn't it? I don't know. It seems to be a team that gets off to a rotten start. Then they have a period where they sort of get better, and then it's whether you can carry on that or come back from that bad start or not, or whether it's a season that sort of puts you into the rot. As I say, good result for Spurs, coming back from their midweek defeat to Monaco. So sort of decent for them, and by all accounts, I mean, I saw the stats, it was an absolute pummeling. How they didn't get more goals is beyond me. But just quickly on them, they did suffer injuries to Kyle Walker, Eric Dyer and Moussa Dembele for a change. He's never usually injured. But 3 players coming off, all with muscular injuries. A touch of Arsenalism. It's in North London, or do you think that is just a sign of the Wembley big pitch? Because that's what a lot of people are suggesting.
A touch of Pochettinoism if it's muscle injuries, because they've been running so long. I'm surprised they haven't burned out yet. So that's interesting. I don't know with the exact nature of those muscle injuries. I didn't see the game, but yeah, if that's just them pulling up, that interests me greatly. I personally, I'm not in the camp that says that playing at Wembley is a big deal. I think if you're moving stadium and you're getting used to it, I think it's a much bigger deal. If you know you're going to be there for a few weeks and a few games, I don't buy into that myself. But at the same time, I don't support a club that's ever had to do that. So, maybe there's something in it, maybe there's not. For me, I don't think there's enough in it to pin a defeat to Monaco on it, or whatever else they want to say. Realistically, though, I'm sure that you're in a better position to speak about what it means to go and play at a neutral venue when you're between grounds. But for me, I don't think it's enough to really complain about myself.
No, it doesn't. It certainly didn't help Arsenal back in the late '90s. The Wembley thing, it really didn't work. I think it worked on a monetary side, but no, on the pitch, we just never properly felt like home. And teams standardly raised their game to play at Wembley. So I don't think that experiment particularly works. And if you want John's views on that, have a listen to last week's Satchel. We covered that issue on the Satchel, but we'll bring it back to England again, and we're going to switch to the other Sunday game. And this was, we said last week, Ross, didn't we? Whoever won this game could potentially put the other manager under pressure, and particularly if it was a fairly comprehensive victory. Well, Crystal Palace 4, Stoke City 0 is quite a comprehensive victory for Palace and Pardew. So we naturally have to turn the focus on Stoke. They're shipping goals heavily. I mean, really, really heavily. 4 in this game. They shipped 4 at Spurs last week. They shipped 4 at Manchester City. And obviously the week before that was a defeat to Everton. They're bottom of the Premier League as it stands. 1 point from their 5 matches played. Minus 11 goal difference. They've got quite a few key players injured. Should we be looking at Mark Hughes as a manager with a bit of pressure, especially after today?
Well, absolutely. But from the stats that I've been reading since this slump started this season, by the way, this is the worst start they've ever made to any season ever. It's no longer the worst in 38 or 42 or whatever. This is the worst season they've ever had in terms of how many points they've garnered from the first few games. But the other stat that impresses me is that I think, if I've got the number right, it's somewhere around 60 goals they've conceded in 2016, which is the most in the Premier League. It's about 8 more than Bournemouth conceded this year. That surprises me hugely, and it does impress me because that's a record that is very, very hard to gain, especially when you're a team like Stoke City, which is renowned for being a grappling rugby kind of football club. So yeah, when you start stacking it up against the 2016 records, the way they ended last season, the way they've started this season, he is a manager under pressure. The fans seem to have been on his back for far longer than perhaps some of the neutrals have realised. It's now coming out in a very bloody fashion because of the results they've had early doors. It still surprises me that they've been this easily beaten and swept aside by teams that they really should have been taking points from. I don't think Crystal Palace are the best team in the league by any stretch of the imagination, but 4-1 over Stoke City is still a huge result. I don't care what kind of slump they're in at the moment. When you get 4 goals past Stoke, it's big news. The thing I'd say about Palace is that, of course, that Pardew has always had this set tactic, which is big man up front, 3 quick men around him, and then just hold the line at the back. And now he's finally got that with Benteke, Townsend, Punchin and Zaha. So it doesn't surprise me that Palace have started to turn a corner a bit with this result. But Stoke, it's bizarre. They've got a gritty team in that starting 11 that will get their head stuck in, put their boot in, will fight for the shirt, and for some reason it's just been going further and further and further downhill. I don't know if it's the penalty decisions at the start of the season, which have then kind of snowballed and got a bad mood around the place, and it's then gone on. But when you look back at the stats from 2016 as a whole, it's not looking good, and you do have to wonder when the axe falls, because Mark Hughes is a strange manager that I don't think sets the world alight, but I still think plays a bit more of an interesting brand of football than someone like Tony Pulis, because he doesn't set the world alight, but he just thinks defensively, whereas Mark Hughes moves forward. They both have their foibles. They're both getting picked on by their fans. It feels like for both of them it's a matter of time, but you'd always back it to be Pulis because it's quote-unquote boring football. And then here, it's just bad. It's just bad football and leaking goals. So very strange, very, very strange club at the moment. I still think they'll be all right. I don't think this is going to last the whole season. But if you'd told me, they'd start this poorly, I'd have been as surprised as in fact I am.
Yeah, same. It's just, it's just one of those, isn't it? You just look at it and you go, well, there's so many good players there. Like, surely they've got enough to be.
It's arguably their best team ever. Arguably. I don't know all the way back through Stoke's history, so I could be wrong, but certainly since they've come up, this is the best team they've ever had. And it's still in this situation.
My best mate is a Stoke fan, and he was saying that it is the best squad he's ever seen. And his words, not mine, Hughes is the problem. and he said that he feels like he's lost not the dressing room, but lost the idea of what he wants to put in between. He said a few seasons ago they were the strong Pulis Stoke that Hughes took over and just continued with. Then he tried to transition it into a bit more flair with the Arnautovic's and the Bojans, etc. And he said now they're a team that doesn't really know what they are, a team without an identity, and they don't know what side they are. They've got players like Shawcross, like Adam, like Whelan, who are the grafters, but they're not anymore. They're not blending anymore with the flair players, and that is showing on the pitch. That's his view. So, be interested. I don't know whether we have any Stoke fans listening to us, but if we do, then give us a nudge, give us a tweet, and let us know what you think of Stoke. Let's circle the clock back then to we should say as well, good win for Palace that, and we do of course wish Papa Soare a full recovery in his recent injury. Suffered a car accident last week, which was, by all accounts, pretty horrific from what I can gather, and multiple injuries for him. So we wish him well in his recovery. Let's go back to Saturday then, Ross, and we had the 6 games on Saturday. 5 games on Saturday, sorry, and we'll come back to Fridays. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten it. But we'll start with the late game on Saturday. Everton 3, Middlesbrough 1. Middlesbrough going in front through Alvaro Negredo, and all was looking well for them. Suspicion of a foul, although I like the fact that it was an old-fashioned challenge. We put Stecklenburg into the net with it. I think it's actually been given as a Stecklenburg own goal now. Yeah, interesting. And then Gareth Barry, of all people, comes up with an equaliser. Seamus Coleman with a second, and Romelu Lukaku with one right before half-time, which I think killed off Middlesbrough. Everton, whether they're doing it to troll you deliberately, probably, but they do look impressive, don't they? You'd have to say with the caveat that they haven't really had any serious tests, and that's not to be dismissive of Middlesbrough or anyone else they played, but they have had a fairly straightforward run so far. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I may have my issues with Koeman, and I have to admit, after some time has now passed, my hate for Koeman is diminishing, and I'm getting over him quite quickly. He's falling in the Pochettino category now, where I still got my problems, but I'm not as fussed anymore. And I have to be not as fussed anymore, because he's going to be a good manager for Everton, and he's got some very good players there. He spent far too much money, which, Southampton fans have been moaning that we should have kept him, or we should have backed him because look how he's doing with Everton. Yeah, but he spent 30 million on Bolasie. You do that once and you're expected to do it every single time a player better than Bolasie comes on the market. If you can take Arsenal as an example. If you look at 35 million on Xhaka, and then Lacazette is on the market for roughly 32 because he could probably persuade the board to let him go for that much. Fans then ask, well, why didn't you spend that money if you spend 35 on him? That's why we didn't want Koeman doing that for us. That's what he'll do at Everton. He'll make it work. He'll win them titles if they can get a decent run. He'll get them some European runs. It will be fantastic for them. So, it doesn't surprise me that he's doing as well as he has done early doors. I do think, on the flip side, he has had some favourable games. I won't say they're easy, because there's no easy game in the Premier League. But he's had some favourable fixtures. He hasn't had a Man City first game, which could have knocked confidence if it didn't go well. He hasn't had a Man United or a Liverpool, which again could knock confidence if it doesn't go well. He hasn't had any surprises from his opponents, which again can knock confidence if it doesn't go well. You don't have to look very far down the league to see teams that have had their confidence knocked. So it doesn't surprise me they've started well. It wouldn't surprise me if they finish in the European places. But at the same time, you have to say it's 5 games in, something in and around that. Let's be a bit more cautious. Let's see how they go. There's still a very, very long race to run. So let's take it with a pinch of salt. Yeah.
I think again, as you say, we can't judge them too much until they have a really big test, and then maybe we can sort of see how they set up in those big games. But nevertheless, a good result. And speaking of good results, there's not a lot we need to say about Manchester City at the moment, because we've kind of been saying it for weeks, but another 4-0 victory for them over AFC Bournemouth. De Bruyne, Kevin Kalichi Iheanacho, Raheem Sterling and Ilkay Gundogan with his first goal since signing from Borussia Dortmund in the summer. Nolito's late red was probably the only spoil of the day, but City, again, as I say, we don't need to go into it too much because we've covered it, but they are quietly impressive, and another comfortable victory against a side they'd be expected to beat at the Etihad.
Yeah. Sorry, I would have
force a habit.
Yeah, Man City just don't interest me at the moment. They really, really don't. You get the feeling every time they play a game, you know exactly how the script's going to read. It's 4-0, well, at least 2, but you normally guess at 3 or 4. It'll be 70% possession by the time the game's done. Won't be too much to shout about except for the attacking play. I'm still not fussed by them. at this point, I'm starting to think that it's going to be a very dull title race, which really doesn't interest me at all. By the look of things, it's going to be Man City all the way, but there's still a long way to go. He's already rivaling records that he set in Germany and in Spain with Bayern and Barca, which is an ominous sign. But I still think with some of the results they've had, some of the goals they've conceded, there will be slip-ups. It will get tougher, especially when you get to the Christmas period. He's got to adjust to that. So it's another one of those. They really don't interest me as a side, as a story anymore. It just feels like they're playing with the cheat code to me. It just feels like they're going to win 3-4-0 every single week. So not overly fussed. Good win over Bournemouth, but I think we all saw it coming. So
I think I'm with you. I think I'm with you on that one. I think that's a very fair assessment, and I know that people will immediately jump on you there and go, "What is he on about? Man City boring." I'm with you. Like I do understand
every
what
week.
you're saying.
I don't really care at this point. They don't interest me. That's it. That's the be all and end all. Very impressed by them, but they don't interest me. That's it. There's no more to say or do.
We're not saying they're bad. We're not saying they've not been fantastically impressive, because they have. Clearly, they've been absolutely brilliant. But it's just very. Yeah, samey, isn't it? Samey.
It's the reason European football doesn't interest me, because I look at the French league and I think, oh, PSG are going to win that. I look at the Spanish league and I think, oh yeah, Barcelona or Real Madrid are going to win that. I look at Germany, oh, Bayern Munich are going to win that. That's why the other leagues don't excite me, and this is why Man City don't excite me anymore. Because I look at it and every week it's, oh, they're going to win that. Oh yeah, I don't see Bournemouth getting anything out of that, and I don't think they're going to trouble them. Eddie Howe said in the build-up they've got a great chance against Man City, and I looked at it and went, really? Have you seen them? He's talking out of his somewhere or other. No one believes it. Unless you're a big top 4 club, and even then, as soon as a goal goes in, you go, all right, here we go. It's coming. That's why they don't interest me. That's why I find them boring. It just doesn't interest me. If they win the league by an absolute landslide, which if they carry on this way, they're going to, I'll be the first to congratulate them, because I congratulate them now. It's brilliant football. It works for them. It wins them games, etc. I just don't find it interesting. I just don't. The story they tell as a club, the way they'll win the league, that doesn't interest me. The way they play the game doesn't interest me. Very impressive, but I'm just not entertained by it. That's it, So congratulations, another 4-0. I'll see you this time next week for the same score.
and you have every right to your opinion, as I'm sure everyone will agree as well. So one thing, if you I know you don't like European football, Ross, but if you get a chance, and I know listeners won't be listening to this in play, but have a little flick onto Roma Fiorentina. 2 lovely kits on display. I mean, if nothing else, Roma's third kit is an absolute treasure.
I was sure you were going to talk about Argentina's inflatable tunnels then.
Oh no, we'll come on to those, don't you worry. But no, for listeners who haven't seen it, Roma's third kit is very much like a Solero lolly. It's beautiful.
By the way, before someone pulls me up, I know Argentina is not in Europe, all right? Don't get me on that.
We'll explain that in a minute. We will explain that in a second. Okay, let's move on to another game then. West Ham. We again said last week that I listened to BBC 606 last night, and I heard the new presenter, who I must admit I'm not a huge fan of, but that's another story. And he was saying that a West Ham fan called up, and he was saying the idea that Bilic is under pressure and could be out is absolute madness, ridiculous. He called it. I'm not sure it is ridiculous when he comes out after the game, a 4-2 defeat, I should say, to West Brom, and calls his team embarrassing. I think that smacks of a guy who, yes, is very honest, but is also massively under pressure. And when you lose to West Brom, that's tough. No offence to West Brom, but when you lose 4 goals in 56 minutes to a team that rarely score twice in a game, I mean, questions have to be asked. Yes, they got 2 goals back. Mikel Antonio, what would they do without him, by the way? And Lanzini with a penalty, but it's another defeat for West Ham, and their season is in danger of going off a cliff, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think Bilic is in danger of losing his job immediately, but he's certainly under pressure if this carries on for a few more games. I mean, let's not forget that the move to the new stadium was meant to herald Europa League football. This was the script anyway. They were going to get into the Europa League after they moved to their new stadium. They were going to push for European places in the league. This was a brave new start for West Ham, and it's all fallen away. They lost to Astra for the second year in a row at their stadium, got knocked out of the Europa League. Here they are now, 2 4-2 defeats in a row. Conceding 4 against West Brom is, with all due respect to West Brom, shocking. Especially with the way West Brom have been playing early doors in this season. It's a huge result. It's massive, and people keep telling me that they haven't changed much in the team, but it's just the sheer amount of bodies they brought in and moved out, that has to disrupt things. And then you go to a new stadium, which, as I was saying to you pre-pod, feels to me like they're still not used to it. They still feel like it's an away stadium, and they haven't really acclimatised to it yet, which is why I backed them against West Brom. I was doing my accumulator this weekend, and I thought, yeah, West Ham, easy win for them, because they'll be away from the London Stadium. They'll have the fans off their back. It's a good chance to relax a bit and start playing their... No, three goals down by half-time. It's bizarre how badly they've done. It's a complete turnaround from last season. He will be under pressure, and I'm sure he already is, because it's a fan base that believes in a quote-unquote West Ham way, that believes that they should be going in a certain direction. They've got a board and an ownership that demands, a certain level of success each season, let alone each game, it feels like. And there's this mantra, this message coming out of the club, which is all hope and glory, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it's just not come together. So I think this runs much deeper than Bilic, and I would be very, very surprised if they let him go. Maybe it's that tells me that he's not under pressure, or not under that much pressure, and he won't be going anytime soon. But if it carries on, then absolutely the fans will turn on him, because the managers are always the one that gets picked on. The fans will turn on him, and they'll want him out, and they're the ones that will get him sacked. I don't think the board will do it, because I think the board understand that he's a very good manager, and he'll be there for as many years as they want him there, because he loves the club, and they've got a great plan for the future. But I think this runs much deeper than Bilic. But be another interesting one. It all depends how they do in the next few weeks for me.
It does, yeah. They're definitely set under pressure, and I think getting key players back, not just back, but back into form, because there's too many of their big players are just not performing right now. So they're definitely one to keep an eye on. And the pressure lifts on Tony Pulis for a week, I would suggest. Obviously, we'll look at the fixtures for next week in a minute, but yeah, I mean, it still strikes me as a club that there's still something not quite right, but there was a bit of a feel-good factor there yesterday. I'm still going to back them for relegation, because I don't want to change my mind, although halfway through this season already.
I've already changed my mind. So.
Yeah, I just feel like they're a side that, as you rightly said, they've taken advantage of a poor West Ham form, and they've got the points, but would I back them to score 4 goals in the game again? Probably not, but hats off.
You haven't seen who they got next week, have you?
I bet it's Man City.
Stoke City.
Oh, Stoke. Oh, okay. I might back up there. But a good victory nevertheless. And staying with good victories. What about the Arsenal? Picking up a 4-1 victory at Hull City. Helped in no small part by Hull going down to 10 men sort of fairly early in the
Great save by Jake Livermore, though.
Absolutely fantastic save, yeah. There's a future in goalkeeping for him without any shadow of a doubt. But I mean, what do you make of Arsenal? Because started the season poorly, and have got progressively better. It's another impressive away victory against the Hull side that we all know realistically they're going to struggle, even though they've had a brilliant start. But it's a difficult place to go, is the old KCOM. And goals for 2 from Alexis Sanchez, 1 for Theo Walcott, and an absolute thunderbastard from Granit Xhaka to finish the piece. But 4-1 away from home, Arsenal sit third. It's getting better, isn't it? That sort of slow start against Liverpool has been kind of erased. So, do you feel like Arsenal are getting back into gear just ahead of playing Chelsea next week?
I don't see much difference between the Arsenal of this season, the Arsenal of last, the Arsenal before, the Arsenal before. It's just the way they do things for me. It's a mixed bag, 1 week they get absolutely tonked, and then the next week they absolutely tonk someone, and the fans bicker and moan at each other, and the next week they get a nice easy 1-0 or a 2-1 or a 3-0, and then next week they're getting tonked. It's just Arsenal for me. I don't see this being any particularly unique start for them. I don't see it being a particularly bad start or good start. It always just seems to me that there comes a negative message from the fan base, and you think, oh god, Arsenal must be in 14th or somewhere, and they look at the table and they're third. It just seems like there's a disconnect in the way that their games are analysed and then the results they actually get. Maybe that's just me from the outside, but I don't see it as particularly special or unique or noteworthy start for Arsenal. It's just Arsenal. They'll carry on doing this all season long. So I don't see enough in them to believe that they'll be anywhere else other than the top 4. I still think they're good enough for that. I still think they'll churn out the wins for it. I think there are teams that will fall away and that will struggle. Man United will look like they could be wobbling. Liverpool will still lose a fair amount of games with their gung-ho style. I think Arsenal will just sail through choppy waters and will get there in the end. So I'm not I'm not overly interested in a quote-unquote bad start or a quote-unquote good start. It's just an Arsenal start for me.
Yeah, fair play, fair play. I can't disagree with you, to be perfectly honest with you. And obviously the real test will come against Chelsea next week. Finally, on the Saturday games, Leicester City 3-0 victory over Burnley. Isman Slimani with 2 goals as well as a Ben Mee own goal. He's a player I do like a lot, and I said at the time when he signed for Leicester that's a very good piece of business. Seen a lot of him at Sporting Lisbon in Portugal, and he's a very, very accomplished centre forward. And the link up with Riyad Mahrez is already there from the Algeria national side. So I'm pleased it's working out for him. Leicester quietly slipping back into some sort of gear, albeit against the Burnley side that maybe aren't going to get much from travelling fixtures this season.
Yeah, well, I think it's a much more realistic picture of Leicester this year. They'll go through spells where they don't do very well and they'll lose the odd game, and someone will get a quote-unquote surprise win over them, and then they'll go next week and beat a team like Burnley 3-0. I think this season you're going to see a much more true reflection of who Leicester are and what Leicester are. So this result didn't surprise me. I had held hope that Burnley could get something after their midweek fixture against Club Brugge. I was kind of hoping that Burnley might be able to pick off a tired leg here or something, but it's just the unrelenting pace they have up front. They've got this great work ethic and fantastic runners and some very good technical players, and Burnley just don't, unfortunately. So didn't surprise me. Good win. It's hopefully something to build on for them. But once again, I don't want to read too much into this about them maybe challenging for this. This feels like a much more normal, realistic season for Leicester, and they'll win a few of these and they'll lose a couple of these as well this season.
Yeah, again, very fair analysis. And the final game we're going to talk about before we go into your EFL roundup is Liverpool and Chelsea, which was a Friday night football game and all the razzmatazz that goes with it. Now, I hold my hands up, Ross. I might be a football hipster, but I had pressing commitments on Friday evening, so I was not able to see this game live. I was, however, able to receive the many hundreds of tweets, people telling me about Henderson Cavani scoring 4 goals for PSG. But that's another story. So, I don't know if you watched this game. I hope you did, but I did see the result. I have seen the goals. Jordan Henderson's obviously is quite a standout because that was some hit. I don't know if you've seen it, but Grugic, the substitute's eyes on the bench reacting to the goal was probably the highlight of the game for me. But if you saw this game, what did you make of it? And Liverpool, are they title contenders, or is that just their fans getting a bit too excited again?
That's their fans getting too excited again. The game was alright. The first half was all Liverpool. They had nice control. Midfield surprised me a lot because they've got obviously Lallana and Wijnaldum in a holding role with Henderson, and it always, every time I see it, I just think, how is that meant to keep the ball any further than their own 6-yard line? I don't understand how that is a solid midfield. But against a team like Chelsea, you would have expected Chelsea to have had a lot more control in that midfield, and it was all Liverpool, and full credit to Lallana, Henderson and Wijnaldum for doing it. I know on Soccer Saturday, ironically Saturday, they pulled out Wijnaldum and said that he was a very, very good player in that game and controlled the game from midfield and was very, very impressive. So full credit to Leicester. For Liverpool for a really good game plan. It was just Chelsea that let me down a bit in the first half, especially. Second half they looked a bit better and they came out with a bit more fight and hunger. But yeah, it was a fantastic performance from Liverpool. Let's give credit where it's due. They were very, very good in the first half. Still questions over Daniel Sturridge, whether or not he really fits in with what Klopp wants, whether he's really got the right mindset for it at the moment. He seems to be frustrated everything he misses. He doesn't seem to think, right, let's go for the next one. He seems to just be thinking about the last one all the time. It just doesn't seem to be clicking for him. But very impressive from Liverpool. I won't deny that, but are they going to win the league? No, they're miles off winning the league as of yet. That back line is still wobbly as anything, and they will still concede 4 against Norwich, or not Norwich because they've been relegated, but they'll still concede 4 against Middlesbrough and Stoke even. That's the propensity of Liverpool. They can win 5-0, but they could also lose 3-4 any given week. So they're still not going to win the league as far as I'm concerned. If they do, it will be a massive shock. Even if they're second, it will be a massive shock, because I think the front 6, brilliant. The rest of the team, far too wobbly for me.
That's exactly my thoughts, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm genuinely not just saying that. You've summed up everything I was thinking. I mean, Liverpool fans, some are very balanced, very measured, and very well educated in football, and others tend to go a little bit off the deep end at the wrong times in how they feel about the club. And I admire the passion, but I think sometimes you just have to look at the project. What Jurgen Klopp is doing there is clearly very good, and you can't knock it. But as you rightly say, I think it's a little bit too easy to. I think it's a little bit too soon to be saying that they're the finished article, especially when you look at the likes of Man City and indeed Chelsea, who I thought just had a poor night from what I can gather.
It might seem a bit of a strange thing to say, but I think Klopp's problem really is it's almost too exciting. Because they play this brilliant style, and every time you watch it, you think, "Oh wow, what a team Liverpool are," and then it hides the fact that the back line is so wobbly and. You kind of buy into the goal threat and you forget that they've got problems at the back. I think that's part of the problem with Liverpool fans is they have this feeling that you're just going to be able to outgun people because the front six is so good. And it's like, no, it's a team effort. You can score as many as you want, but if the back line's not there, then the back line's not there. And thankfully, it was very good against Chelsea, but we've seen plenty of examples under Klopp in the year that he's been there that it's not. Defending isn't really his thing. He's not really all that focused on it. He'd rather play the quote-unquote heavy metal football that he loves, and that's a brilliant watch, but it almost suckers you into a false sense of security where you think, oh yeah, we could score 4 past these guys, and then you let one in, and then suddenly it all gets a bit wobbly.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, it's all right playing the heavy metal football, but you've got to have something that comes out at the end of it, and ultimately, it's tough to know whether they can sustain the sort of the patchy form that they've started the season in.
Would you say that Arsenal were very good against them first game of the season?
No,
they still scored 3.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
That's the way to sum it up. You can go through any game they'll play this season, and you'll still look back at that opening game of the season, and you'll think Arsenal weren't very good, and they still almost drew that. So, no, Liverpool aren't title contenders for me. I think they're still a little way off. If he fixes the back line and gets some better wing backs and another decent centre back in there, then yeah, why not? But at the moment, no, not for me.
No, I'm with you. For the record, I don't think we were terrible that game, but we certainly weren't good. So, good points. Good points. Okay, let's have a quick look at. We're still not. Are we still going to? Are we going to do the table? Nobody wrote in saying they wanted us to do the table, so I'll go on. We'll do it quickly. Man City top, yawn. Everton are second, Arsenal third, Chelsea fourth, Liverpool fifth, United sixth. That's your top 6, and your bottom 3 are still in stripes: Stoke, Sunderland, Southampton. Sorry, Ross.
We're out of it now. You're looking at a slow table. We're on 5 points.
I'm looking at the old table. West Ham are in the bottom 3. Sorry, Stoke, Sunderland, West Ham are your bottom 3. Let me do that top 6 again. I was looking at the old table. Man City, Everton, Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, the top 6, with United, Palace, Watford, and West Brom making out the top 10. And then, as you say, the bottom 3: Stoke, Sunderland, West Ham, Bournemouth, Burnley, Swansea are just outside. And as you say, Southampton now 14th and on a roll. So, yes, sorry, my bad.
Thank you.
Mikel Antonio is the top goal scorer. With 5 goals this season.
Surprising, wasn't it, to think that he's top goal scorer?
And Etienne Capoue with yet another goal today as well. He's got 4 for the season. He's having a lovely time down at the Hornets. So good for him. Right then, let's have a look at next week. We have got Saturday, 12:30, Manchester United versus Leicester City. That kicks off your weekend. Bournemouth, Everton, Liverpool, Hull, Middlesbrough, Spurs, Stoke City, West Brom, that monster clash. Sunderland, Palace, which is also quite a biggie. Swansea, Manchester City. Are your 3 o'clocks. Arsenal Chelsea is your tea time offering next Saturday, 5:30, and then next Sunday you've got West Ham Southampton. I'm sure you'll be tuned in for that one, Ross. That's live on the telly. And Monday, we have another Monday game next week. It's Burnley versus Watford, which I've got to be honest, I don't think it's going to draw record viewing figures, that one, but nevertheless will be intriguing. Full stop. I still think it'll be an interesting game, that. So they are your games for next week. Any of those particularly jump out at you, Ross? Any that you really want to keep your eye on?
Stoke West Brom will be an interesting one to watch. It's not going to be a glamour tie, but the result of that is going to be mammoth, I think. And then probably Swansea Man City. And I know I said earlier it's 4-0, it's easy. But considering how bad Swansea were today, they've got to face Man City twice this week in the Cup and then next weekend in the Premier League. So I will be very interested to see how many Man City end up with there. But that's about as far as my interest goes there. And then obviously the most interesting game of the weekend clearly is Arsenal Chelsea, because that's a very juicy tie with 2 teams that will both fancy their chances, I'd have to say, especially with Arsenal being at home. So that's a very nice tie. The West Ham game obviously interests me, but I think most neutrals should be interested in that as well, because West Ham now lost 2 games on the bounce 4-2. Southampton appear to be turning a corner, but have we got them at the wrong time? Are they going to come out of the blocks? Are they going to smash us? Are we going to smash them? Be interesting. It's interesting psychology going into that one. So some very noticeable fixtures next week, but if I had to pick one, it would clearly be Arsenal-Chelsea. That's a very, very juicy fixture.
Yes, absolutely, and one I am secretly petrified about, so that'll be fun. So if I'm not here next week, you know why. It didn't go well if that's the case. Right, it's time for your section now then, Ross, where we're going to have a little trip into all things Football League, EFL Roundup of what's been going on underneath the Premier League, because yes, listeners, there is a world below the Premier League, even though that Sky Sports would have you believe otherwise. Well, not just Sky, in fairness, everyone. But let's go for it then, Ross. What has been happening from Championship down to League Two?
Or League Two from Championship, because that's where I'm going to start once again.
That'll be just as good.
I think the most interesting fixture from League Two this weekend was the old derby between Exeter and Plymouth, and I'm sure there have been a lot of cheering and flag waving around your area, Chris, because
absolutely,
Plymouth got a very nice 2-0 win, very big result. I think that keeps them top if I remember rightly. They've only lost 2 games this season, 6 wins. They are on a roll, and it does look very good for them. The other team that everyone expected to be up there was Portsmouth. Had a bit of a wobble at the start of the season. I think it was last week I pulled them out for a very good win, and this weekend they went away to Accrington Stanley and lost. So very interesting team at the moment, Portsmouth. They have all the tools to come straight up, but it just feels a bit more psychological more than anything after their playoff heartbreak last season. So interesting to keep an eye on them. A very good game between Notts County and Cheltenham Town, 3-2 to Notts County, that finished. And Doncaster Rovers continue to quietly impress, even though I've never been impressed by Darren Ferguson's Doncaster, but League Two seems to be their niche. 2-0 over Newport County, and another big win for Yeovil Town, who I think are now out of the relegation zone, if I remember correctly. Indeed they are. They've swapped places with Exeter City after a 1-0 win over Leyton Orient, and anyone would have backed Leyton Orient to win that, but there you go. Fantastic result for Yeovil, moves them out of the bottom 2. I don't think they'll be out of it for too long, but still, a good result for them there. League One, notable for something that didn't happen along the pitch this weekend. The Bradford City versus Bristol Rovers game suspended for about 5-10 minutes because of an incident I've never heard of before, a drone being flown over the stadium. Apparently that was bad enough to call halt to proceedings, but that's a new one on me. But there you go. It'll be one on Pointless in a few years' time, or The Chase, what stopped the game. Bizarre incident. Northampton Town, I think I'm right in saying, were 32 unbeaten, somewhere in and around that in the league. And then this weekend that finally came to a screeching halt, 3-1 defeat away to Chesterfield. So that's a big scalp for Chesterfield. Charlton Athletic played Wimbledon. That's a local rivalry, doesn't get played very often because of their historical positions in the leagues. You would have backed Charlton every day of the week. They ended up losing 2-1. So brilliant result for Wimbledon. I think that's a very, very famous win for them. But there you go, another damaging result for Charlton, who I do start to worry about. I think Russell Slade is, much like Tony Pulis, he's a very uninspiring manager, but he'll get the job done, and he will get them up and out, but it depends if he gets the time to, because, with the Championship, with League One and with League Two, you get plenty of game practice, but you don't get a lot of time to work on the training ground, and I think that's starting to come into effect for Charlton here. That's a damaging 2-1 defeat for them. And the other one to really pull out from this weekend was Walsall. They got a very, very nice 1-0 home win over Bolton Wanderers. And, of course, Bolton have been doing so well at the start of this season. They were completely undefeated until that game. And then Walsall, who lost their top 7 goal scorers or whatever it was from last season, ended up winning 1-0. So, fantastic result for them. Also, shout out to Jason McCarthy, who got that goal. He's a loanee from Southampton, who I hope one day will be our future captain. So, big result for Walsall, big goal for him as well. And then the Championship. We had some midweek fixtures as well this week. Of course, we did in League 1 and League 2 as well. But the Championship threw up some very interesting results in midweek. The 2 really worth pointing out, or 3 actually. Let's start with the third one, which is Leeds versus Blackburn. Now, we pulled that out last week and said that is a bum fight, and whoever wins that is going to be in a fantastic position. Leeds ended up winning that 2-1, and it seems to be a bit of doom and gloom for Blackburn until they went into the weekend, but more on that in a second. The other 2 results to really pick out: Wolverhampton Wanderers at home to Barnsley, you would have backed Wolves every day of the week after the start they've made. They lose 4-0 to Barnsley. Queen's Park Rangers versus Newcastle. You'd have backed Newcastle, but it's a tough place to go, and it's still a very good. 6-0. 6-0 away win for Newcastle, and honestly should have been 8. I've seen the highlights, some fantastic chances missed by Newcastle. And then, of course, Wolves and Newcastle play each other on the weekend, and you think, oh, easy. One team's going to have their head up, the other team's going to have their head down. Easy Newcastle win. No, Wolves win 2-0. Brilliant story from this week. That's why I love the Championship. It's so strange the way that these results flop around the place. That's just the most brilliant fixture for Wolves to have gotten to prove themselves in. 2-0 win is huge. Other noticeable results from the weekend: Blackburn, who lost, like I say, to Leeds in midweek, a bit of doom and gloom, then went home to face Rotherham United, and it was another one of those, like the Leeds fixture, you thought, wow, they really need to get some points for that. 4-2 win for Blackburn. That's their first win of the season. Very impressive as well. Another Southampton loanee, Sam Gallagher, got one and was very impressive all game long, so great for me to see, but that's a massive win for Blackburn, and they are now officially better than Stoke. Cardiff lost to Leeds, another big win for Leeds. Cardiff now sink to the bottom, and they are really starting to worry me. A team that should be doing far better than they are, but they are now rock bottom. And it seems like Vincent Tan has either just kind of given up or doesn't care anymore, because I've not heard his name for a little while. And it's probably a good thing for Paul Trollope that his name isn't in the paper anymore, because the start they've made is very, very concerning. There was a fantastic result for Brentford, 5-0 over Preston. It was 2-0 until about the 75th minute, and suddenly there was a flurry where Preston just kind of gave up and let them walk it into the back of the net. Some really, really simple goals for Brentford in that game. Derby County finally scored a goal. Thought that was going to be enough to get them a win at long last, and then Bristol City equalised in the last few minutes, so 1-1 there. Aston Villa, poor old Aston Villa, they were expected to absolutely walk this division and expected to be in the top 6 and in the automatic promotion places. I've been concerned about them since day one. We spoke about it on the preview pod. Then they had the transfer window close, and I was still a bit concerned about the makeup of the team and whether it would click quickly enough. They've only won one game this season. They drew 0-0 with Ipswich. It was a bit of a dull game. I had the misfortune of watching it. Wasn't brilliant, but still one they would have expected to get more than a point from. But 0-0 away to Ipswich, and not only are they now sat in 18th with 1 win and 5 draws, they are now looking up at Birmingham City, who everyone loves. Birmingham City are now 5th, which is such a brilliant position for them. 2-1 win over Sheffield Wednesday, a really dramatic end to that game as well, with Lukas Jukovic scoring in the 91st minute, I believe. Brilliant result for them, and they've also now got some Chinese owners coming in the middle of October. That should be ratified. So if Gary Rowett is still there, which he has absolutely no reason to be unless a bigger team comes in for him, if Gary Rowett is still there in January and has some money, he may be able to start bringing in some more players. And if that happens, Birmingham City are right in that promotion place because they have been brilliant. Gary Rowett is a manager that I know you like as well, Chris, and Birmingham is a team that I really like in the Championship, but they never had the money to push on to the next level, which was the big concern. But if this new investment is going to be sizable, then Birmingham City could be a very, very good team to watch coming forward, and maybe even a dark horse for the playoffs. The other noticeable result, mainly for you, Chris, was Nottingham Forest. Now, they went 1-0 up against Norwich City, who I've tipped for automatic promotion back to the Premier League. They went 1-0 up against Norwich City and then lost it 2-1. I know Arsenal have got Nottingham Forest coming up in the week, and if you want to know how you're going to beat Nottingham Forest, it's put a little bit of pressure on them, because before the international break they conceded 4.4 goals on average in all of their games, which was the highest in the UK. They still haven't kept a clean sheet since we've come back from the international break. I'm not nearly good enough with the maths to know exactly what their percentage is now, but it's not looking good for the sheer amount of goals they're shipping. Scoring loads, which is fantastic for them, but they are shipping so many. Scored 16, conceded 17. Very, very concerning for Nottingham Forest. Need to strike a balance, but another fantastic win for Norwich. More results I could have picked out, but those are some of the noticeable ones. The Championship is, again, another fascinating league, only 8 games in, but the table is so topsy-turvy. Derby near the bottom, Cardiff in the bottom, Blackburn in the bottom, and then to the top you've got Huddersfield running away with it at the moment. 2 points clear, 6 wins, only 1 loss. Norwich up there, Newcastle, Barnsley are in there, Brentford, Birmingham. Brilliant start to this season, loving every second of it, and hopefully our listeners are as well.
Yes, yeah, I know. I must admit, I've got tuned. I did watch the Birmingham Sheffield Wednesday game. A hell of a header from Jukovic. It was such a bizarre end of play. It reminded me of the Watford Leicester game, where
classic Championship game that.
yeah, back to front in a second and a goal score, because Sheffield Wednesday had a real good chance from Nihuihu. I always get that wrong, but the big bloke who come on as a sub, and he headed off the crossbar at one end, down the other end went Sheffield Wednesday, Birmingham, sorry, and yeah, Jukovic popped up with a goal, his first goal since joining from Burnley, I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah, on that.
Winning goal and superb, and yeah, as you say, Birmingham, good to see them back up there. And it's a very enjoyable league. Really, really surprised, and nice to see Elias Kachunga on the score sheet for Huddersfield as well. Player I like a lot. So good for him.
Oh, final story to come out of the Championship actually before we leave
just
it behind.
Just going to say, Sheffield Wednesday story. Yes,
yeah. Jeremy Helen, 24 years old, Frenchman, is a player I rate really, really highly because he's a big, strong lad, quite quick as well, good attacker, but also a good wing back. Came from the Man City Youth Academy, has been on loan at Wolves, did very well last season. He's been at Sheffield Wednesday for I think 3 or 4 seasons now, and I've been a big fan of his, waiting for him to get a break in the team. 24 years old, he is now retired to devote himself to his religion, which is a new one on me. I'm not saying it's a bad move. It's just a new one. I've heard of German goalkeepers retiring to go be WWE wrestlers. I haven't heard of this one. So yeah, interesting story. It's a real shame because he's a very, very good footballer and just needed a good run of games. Just needed to prove himself. I thought the Championship was his kind of division. But there you go. A big talent at 24 years old. But he has now retired.
Well, it's like me, Ross, to be fair. I retired from my professional career to concentrate on eating and podcasts. So, you know, it's going well, actually. Yeah, I'm doing one as we speak, and I'll be doing the other shortly afterwards. So,
cool.
Yeah, enjoyable. Right, okay, let's... we haven't got any questions this week, because basically we've done this podcast earlier than normal, so we didn't have a chance to get a tweet out. But as usual, if you do have any questions on the weekend's English action with Ethan, or if you've got any observations you want to tweet at us at the FH podcast, you can do that. Somebody did actually tweet the podcast, which I will just give them the benefit to read, which was Bobby Chakraborty, who said, "Can we laugh at Man United now?" He's an Arsenal fan, so yes, indeed, Bobby, you can laugh at Man United, although don't laugh too hard, because these things often have a habit of coming back and biting us in the behind. What else? Korosh, our good friend Korosh Musavi at Dorf_Guna, he's just tweeted the podcast saying, get him for an appearance on the FH podcast, please. And he's referring to a gentleman called Mr. Gunaholic, who's a proper old school Arsenal fan I've known very well through other mediums that I podcast with. He's been enjoying the Inter Milan Juventus game. He tweeted earlier on, watched Italian football earlier, now back on the French again, time to grow me a beard. I think he's referring to the wine. So good old Mr. Holic. And I want to give a little shout out, actually, which we don't do on this podcast very often, but we've had a follow from someone today. I'm going to read his bio. He goes by the name of Bayliss, at Jakey Bayliss. His bio simply reads, 21, recovering Villa fan and history student, music lover and overall football obsessive, fan blogger for at Birmingham Mail. So a recovering Villa fan. I like that. It leaped out of the page when I saw that, so I thought I'd have to give him a little nudge, because times have been tough down at Villa, and it's great. I think you'll agree, Ross. It's great. We've had a follow from somebody who's not one of the Premier League high flying teams, followed by somebody who's enjoying the Championship, and hopefully they'll enjoy your roundups each week.
Yeah, plenty of good stories in the lower leagues. Like I said in that roundup, Newcastle and Wolves this week. What a turnaround! No one would have seen that coming. There's so much happens just beneath the Premier League that people just don't either seem to recognise or don't seem to take in as much, and it's a real shame, because the Championship may not be full of Manchester Cities and free-flowing football and beautiful attacking flair, but it's so much more passion, so much more dogged and aggressive, and there's a real more deep feel of emotion in the Championship, as I'm sure our Aston Villa fan friend can testify after their start. So yeah, it's always nice to see fans of lower league football coming in and joining us.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And if you are indeed a new listener, then do give us a ping, and we will give a few shout outs. We won't commit to it every week, but we'll give a few shout outs here and there. We get new follows from people with interesting backstories or follow interesting clubs. And I've been a little bit active on the Twitter this week actually, Ross. I've been following a few people from other clubs, other fans of other clubs. I've been going down some hashtags and following people that seem to like other podcasts. So I've been essentially stealing followers. That's what I've been doing. But some people have followed back. So if we get another 4 or 5 listeners each week, then that's going to be a lot after a year, isn't it? That's how I
like
like
to think of it as liberating, since we're such a darn good pod.
Oh well, we are naturally. I mean, other than Football Weekly in the Game and maybe Football Ramble, then we're the best around.
I mean, who else is there? Jeez.
Exactly. We enjoy doing it. That's the most important thing, isn't it? But okay, right before we leave our loyal listeners, all 7 of them, we should do your boss and your dross, because I know some people tune in specifically for that to see if they agree. So let's start with the boss this week. Who have you gone for?
Kevin De Bruyne, who ran the show from minute 1 for Man City. Very, very clever free kick. There are some people saying that he scuffed it. No way in hell has he scuffed that. He's gone underneath the wall. He knows it's jumping. Fantastic player. He's really coming on under Pep, and that's great to see. But for me, there was no one better than De Bruyne this weekend.
Yeah, that's probably quite a shout. And who? This is it's always the big one. Who is the dross this week?
Yeah, I had trouble this weekend because there was no one that really stood out as scored 3 own goals and got himself sent off or punched the manager or anything like that. In the end, I've gone for Masuaku of West Ham, who, of course, for some reason handled the ball, forgot what game he was playing, and was just caught out of position so many times in that West Ham game. He was responsible, or at least partially responsible, for 3 of those 4 goals. So for me, it's Masuaku.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, super. I'm going to leave our podcast this week with a Plymouth Argyle reference, Ross, because you'll appreciate this. It's a quote that comes from Derek Adams, the Plymouth Argyle manager, and it was after the I think it's fair to say it's quite a strong rivalry with Exeter City, and as you say, Plymouth Argyle winning 2-0. And Derek Adams' quote after the game was, "I saw a banner unveiled before the game. What I would say to that is this: Devon is green and white tonight, and it always will be." I thought that was rather nice, seeing as he's a man who's only been down here for a little while. So that certainly got him on in the good books of the Plymouth natives. So fair play to Derek Adams, hero of the week. Right, okay then. So Ross, we'll be back next Sunday, won't we? It will soon be coming around again. Before you know it, it'll be another week gone. So we'll, as we discussed earlier, we'll have Chelsea, Arsenal to get our teeth into, as well as a whole host of Championship stories and more from the Premier League as well. So we'll be back next week. And thank you as always for your time and your input this evening.
No, pleasure as ever.
And as usual, if you want to give Ross a follow, you can at Ross Bramble, all one word. And you can follow our podcast at the FH Podcast. That's FH. And you can, of course, subscribe to us via YouTube, via iTunes, or Audio Archive. Or, of course, you can visit our website, thefootballhipsterspodcast.co.uk. And we will soon be live on SoundCloud as well. So plenty of places to listen to us. Check out our back catalogue. Send us any questions or tweets you might want to do. And tell your friends. We appreciate it. But that has been the Football Hipsters English Breakfast for the weekend of the 18th of September. Have a jolly good week. Enjoy your EFL games. Oh, Ross, I tell you, I've forgotten one thing very quickly. 3 games from you, the EFL trophy this week. 3 games for you to look out for. We forgot all about that.
Yeah, we did. I'd forgotten the cup was even happening. I even mentioned it a few times and I still forgot the cup was happening. Okay, so I would point out Newcastle Wolves, which is obviously a rematch from the weekend. That's I'm going to be having so much fun with that one. Leicester versus Chelsea is obviously a big one. That's the same night. That's also Tuesday. And then I'd have to say, and I know not everyone will agree with me because there are some other very good ties like Swansea Man City, Northampton Man United. I would say West Ham versus Accrington Stanley, because that has the potential to be a very tricky evening for West Ham if they have not got their house in order. So those are my quick 3 picks, but some very, very interesting fixtures from this week. Arsenal, of course, away at Nottingham Forest as well.
Splendid. So there we are. We got there in the end. We might have forgotten it, but we got there in the end. But yes, full EFL Cup programme with the big guns coming in this week. So if you are quite bored, there's plenty of European midweek action and there's plenty of domestic English EFL Cup action to look forward to as well. Right, okay, that really is it this time, I promise. We are going to get out of here, but thank you as always for listening. We do appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, give us a review if you get 5 minutes, and we'll be back next week. We'll be back with the regular pod on Tuesday afternoon, recorded tomorrow night for all you European football fans. So we've been the Football Hipsters. Keep your beer strong and your glasses trendy, and we will speak to you this time next week.